Today on the Daily Bell Ringer, we're focusing on Henry Clay. Hello, welcome to the Daily Bell Ringer. Please don't forget to check out the questions down in the description. And also, I'd love to see your answer to question number 5 in the comments below. So today we're going to be taking a look at Henry Clay. Henry Clay, arguably one of the most dominant political figures of the early to mid 1800s, but a lot of times someone that a lot of people have never even heard of before because he never became president. But let's go ahead and take a look at Henry Clay's background. So Henry Clay was born in 1777 in Virginia, and he's one of 7 children. His father was a minister there in Virginia, and interestingly, Henry Clay, like I said, born in 1777, he's born right there as the American Revolution is beginning. Actually, his home was, I guess you could say, ransacked or invaded by the British, and when he was only 3 years old. But in 1797, Henry Clay became an attorney, and when he becomes an attorney or a lawyer, he moves out to Kentucky. And one of the big reasons he moves to Kentucky is because, of course, Americans are expanding west. There's a lot of argument over land, and there's a lot of legal issues that have to be settled. And so when he gets out there, of course, there's a lot of work to be done. And so he moves to Lexington, Kentucky. While they're in Lexington, Kentucky, he meets his wife, Lucretia, and they are actually married for over 50 years, and they have 11 children together during their time together. But it's in 1811 that Henry Clay first, gets elected to the House of Representatives representing the state of Kentucky. And what's interesting is on his very first day in the House of Representatives, he gets chosen to be the Speaker of the House. So that kind of shows, I guess, what a powerful personality Henry Clay had. All right. And as soon as he joins the House of Representatives, of course, it's 1811. We have impressment going on. We have the British violating neutral rights. And so he's one of those war hawks who was really pushing for a war with Britain. What's ironic, though, is he pushes for this war in the War of 1812, but he's also chosen by James Madison to be one of the negotiators to go over to Ghent, Belgium, to negotiate the peace, and that's what he helps to do there in late 1814, actually December 24th of 1814, when they signed the Treaty of Ghent. But for the next 40 years, Henry Clay is basically everywhere in American politics. He's in the House of Representatives. He serves in the Senate. He serves as Secretary of State. He serves in all these different capacities in American politics. But probably what he's most famous for is his ability to compromise or negotiate. In fact, he becomes known as the Great Compromiser, is basically what his nickname becomes. One of the first major compromises he's involved in is, of course, the Compromise of 1820, otherwise known as the Missouri Compromise. One of the big things he's involved in, of course, is keeping the peace between slave states and free states. Because we got to remember at this time, as we're adding states to the Union, big issue is, are they going to be a free state or a slave state, and are they going to throw off that balance in Congress between slave states and free states? So in 1820, he negotiates this Missouri Compromise, where Missouri entered as a free state, or I'm sorry, Missouri entered as a slave state, and Maine entered as a free state, and then they put a limit on where slavery could spread out in the Louisiana Territory. His next big compromise he's involved in is in 1833, when we have the nullification crisis, of course, going on, where southern states were upset about a tariff on imported goods, and actually were threatening to leave the Union to secede in 1833. And so he steps in and negotiates a new tariff, where the tariff is going to get lowered, and it's enough to appease those southern states to where they stay in the Union. And then his last big compromise that he's involved in is, of course, the Compromise of 1850, where California entered it as a free state, but it threw off that balance in Congress. And so there's several other things like Fugitive Slave Act, settling the border with Texas, and all these different pieces that are in this negotiation where California enters as a free state. So really, if it wasn't for Henry Clay, one could argue that the Civil War would have happened a lot sooner if it had not been for Henry Clay. All right, but Henry Clay did have presidential ambitions. He runs for president in 1824. He doesn't get the Democratic-Republican nomination. Actually, John Quincy Adams and Andrew Jackson do, and actually Henry Clay ends up helping John Quincy Adams win the election in the Congress, because the election was so close that it got thrown to the House of Representatives, and Henry Clay helped John Quincy Adams win, and of course in return Henry Clay becomes Secretary of State. In 1831, Clay again attempted to win the White House, but He loses to Andrew Jackson, 1840. He thought for sure he was going to be the new Whig Party nomination, but instead they go with William Henry Harrison, who of course dies a month later after being inaugurated. But then in 1844 is his last attempt to become president, and he loses to James K. Polk, primarily because Henry Clay was opposed to annexation of Texas and to Manifest Destiny, I guess you'd say, and to a war with Mexico. And so, ironically, Henry Clay's son is actually killed in the Mexican-American War. Henry Clay dies on June 29th, 1852. A lot of states end up having days of memory of Henry Clay, including Illinois, and the guy who gives the eulogy for Henry Clay here in Illinois is Abraham Lincoln. Okay, so hopefully you learned something there, and thanks for watching.